Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Easter Vigil time, and we made it. It's Easter, guys. It's so exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow, for a while there, I wondered if we was going to make it, but we did. So, hey, today we want to talk a little bit about the celebration of Easter and the Easter Vigil especially. So, but let's begin with Our Father. Would you join me, please? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Today I always think about those first Christians that must have woke up on that Saturday after Good Friday. And man, it must have been depressing. Their life was over, or at least it felt like it was over. Yeah. Their Jesus has died and he is in the tomb, and they had no hope for that. Today, we don't experience that today as Easter Vigil because we know Christ is risen. But sometimes I think we forget that in our lives, especially when we deal with hurt, frustration, disappointment. Sometimes we forget Christ has risen, so we can kind of relate to those people once in a while. So let's try to remember this coming year that Christ has risen sometimes when we feel the darkness that happens in our lives. Well, of course, this is Chris and Julie Perry. Welcome. We're so glad you're here joining us today.
Well, thanks for having us, Kevin and Saige. This is an awesome opportunity for us.
Hey, Chris, would you tell us a little about the Easter Vigil and what that's all about?
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, in my life, this Easter Vigil is a busy time for me, just the whole celebration of it. But what we do is we remember what it was like before Christ died and rose from the dead. And one of the things that we portray that with is we first start in the church, in a darkened church. And so there's no lights on anywhere in the church. And there's a little flickering flame up in the front. And the way it all starts is we just come out and it's dark, and all of a sudden Father says an opening prayer, and then the flame starts getting bigger, and at that time we actually bless the Easter candle. Well, and so you'll see that tonight, the blessing of the Easter candle, and from there that fire signifies when the Jews were leaving Egypt and heading into the desert, and that column of fire absolutely led them into where they want. Yeah. And so we see that fire, and we actually start with that fire in the front, and we take it to the back of the church, and then we light candles. And so the church lights from the back to the front, and that column of fire leads that fire all the way to the front of the church. It is just really awesome.
It is.
And so that's a big part of it, the fire. And then we immediately plunge the church back into darkness for Old Testament readings. And the church has a choice of about 9 of those readings. And quite often here at St. Pat's, we do maybe 7 of them. But it starts with the story of creation and the Jews, actually Abraham and Isaac and their almost sacrifice, or their sacrifice, and then ends up with Moses leaving the desert. But through all those Old Testament readings, the church stays dark, and then we hear an epistle from the New Testament, and the lights come on in the church, and then we start the Easter Vigil separate celebration, and from there we renew our baptismal promises. Usually we would be baptizing new people coming into the church, our catechumens, and then after that we would bring in the folks that are going to be confirmed, and then of course we continue with the Mass, and we have the celebration of the Eucharist. But from the beginning in the darkness to that bright light, it all just, it's just so powerful, and I'm so very lucky to be able to participate in that in various ways, and just celebrate the mass as it goes, but it's such a long mass. It usually takes almost 3 hours to get through all this. The live stream that you're going to see later on today will not be 3 hours, but it'll you'll have a lot of what we do at the Easter Vigil on that live stream.
So, Chris, what would be the purpose of all those readings? Could you kind of clarify that?
Sure. It's to remind us of
Sure.
that God started with nothing here, and of course the creation story. God gave Adam and Eve a place to be, and then they decided that they didn't like that place. They wanted something else. I think they used House Hunter's model, looking for something else. But anyway, so all these stories are to guide us through where those people were. And as Kevin started out, that they didn't know how all this was going to end. We know the ending of this story. We already know. We are all saved. Mm-hmm. Jesus rose from the dead, and no matter how dark those times are, Jesus rose from the dead. But all those stories are to show us how time after time after time, we do it in our lives, but the Jewish people did it in their lives. They left that covenant. They broke that covenant with God, and then they had to kind of get back in there. And each one of those stories shows us different ways that God did it. But God never left that covenant. He always has it, and we still have that covenant with Him too. And so we reflect on Abraham starting that covenant, all the way a covenant with Moses, a covenant with David, and then the coming of our Savior and bringing it all together for us. And that's where we're at right now, and that's just a great time to be in the world. I couldn't have been I need to know the end of the story. I always read that last page first.
That's right.
It's a pretty beautiful service. It's really long, like Chris mentioned. So when we're at homes, Julie, should we turn off our lights in the beginning and turn them on just the same way that the church happens? Should we light candles? Should we do that kind of thing at home?
Oh, I think so, especially in light of the time we're going through now.
Yeah.
Because we won't be actually in the church, but our home is a domestic church, and we have to try to imitate what our parish life would be like. I think it's a great idea to light some candles, make it a family thing. Have the littlest even help. Get a quicker clicker and do that as the readings progress. And then when I believe that Father will say tonight, you can extinguish your candles, and then we relight them again one more time. But yeah, so dress up. I would encourage people to dress up in your Easter finery, for this. Don't just sit around in your, lounge gear and your, pajamas. This is the biggest celebration of the year for our church.
One thing I think too that's really important, and I don't want our people to miss it, is we're going to renew our baptismal vows.
Oh, yes.
Would you? And that's really, I think, an important part of all this too. Would you talk a little bit about that, Julie?
That to me is a really big deal because we come into church each Sunday or each time we go to Mass, and we dip our hand into the holy water and we remind ourselves of our baptism. But we do it as a community. That the water is a big deal. If you remember, up in the front of the church, there's the baptismal font. That begins to flow during one of the readings, and that to me is kind of like, oh, finally, because this has been a long haul from Ash Wednesday to tonight, and it's like we can breathe again. It's a very dry time. We did a talk at RCIA about the desert experience of Lent, and we believe that we need to put ourselves in that desert because they always say without rain there wouldn't be a rainbow. Without storms we wouldn't appreciate the good. So it's just really important to kind of renew and refresh us in our faith after this long journey through the desert of Lent. I'm sure he's gonna get the holy water out and people will know. There's a drenching that takes place, and we kind of look forward to it. People take their glasses off at Mass and stuff, but it's a reminder who we belong to, and God's promise to us once again. Once that water is poured over our heads in the sacrament of baptism, we become marked forever as a child of God, and it's one more reminder, and we need to do that. That's why we have holy water in our churches in the very entryway, so that every time we enter there, we remember who who's got us, who
Yeah,
we
and
belong to.
And I hope this year we don't forget that our baptismal promises is not only that promise of our relationship with Christ, but it's to one another. And I hope we don't forget that because we're in our own separate homes, but we're making that recommitment back to one another too.
Right.
Yeah, we're a family.
Exactly.
As baptized Christians, Catholic Christians, we're a family, and those roots go out a long, long ways. It's not just about me and Jesus; it's about us, and we have to remember that we're a family.
Yes.
And during those baptismal promises, we make that promise, and the whole church hears that promise we make. Well, in your own homes, you're going to be saying that with your families and making that promise to your families that do you believe in God? Do you rebuke Satan? And so it's just very powerful, and you're going to hear your family say that right there and there won't be any mumbling. You know, you'll have to say it. So it'll be quite interesting.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
So after Easter Vigil, which is a remarkable time, it's a remarkable service for our church, then we also have the opportunity to watch Sunday morning mass. So that will be recorded and posted on Sunday morning. But as we look at our families, we've talked about our whole church as a family, but what about our family at home? I know for me growing up, I didn't grow up in a Christian or a Catholic household. We had an idea about God. We knew that he existed, but that was it. We didn't go to church. We didn't do any of that. Easter for me, for most of my childhood, was about eggs and chocolate and bunnies. That was the story of Easter.
Not
for
a
me.
bad thing. In my
I agree. Eggs and chocolate and bunnies still very important.
Good start.
But how, Julie, do we take our families and make sure that we keep Christ at the center of all of this? How do we start at our family and make sure that it's about Christ at the beginning and then eggs and chocolate and bunnies second?
Just a really quick story. When we moved into our home, we have a stone wall that's directly, when you walk in, that's what you see is this, and it looks very much like the stone wall behind the altar at St. Patrick's. And we just been there not very long, and we got up in the morning, and our older son had drawn a picture of the crucifix, and then he had paper Alleluia on both sides of that on the stone wall.
Wow.
So it was really cute because they got it, they understood, and they still do. But it's just important to we get to say Alleluia. Finally, we get to say Alleluia.
You said it.
I do. A little early here, folks. No, but praise. It's just about praise. Usually Easter, we can't ever make any guarantees about the weather, but things are popping up. It's a time of resurrection. The tulips are popping up, the crocuses, the daffodils are up. We are a resurrection people. And I think to go outside and look at the buds on your trees and, the plants in your yard and go, they're coming to life, just like Jesus came to life. I mean, it's a reminder to us that death does not win, that we are resurrection people. And even though our yards look pretty gnarly in the wintertime, there's not a lot going on, with the snow and all that, we see life coming to be once again, and we're a resurrection people. And I think to use those little things and to have a meal that celebrates, I think ham and something is traditional. We don't always go with the traditional at our house, but it's a big deal. Growing up, it was huge. I had 5 sisters at the time, and we comprised the bigger portion of our church choir in our little town, and we prepared for that for a long time. So it was a big deal. My mom, God bless her, she's still going at 95. She made new dresses for all of us girls for Easter.
I remember those days.
Oh my gosh! And we'd get up in the morning to see if the skirt part was hooked to the top part, and like 2 of us had the same fabric, the other 2 had the same fabric, the twins had the same fabric, and it was just everything was coming to life, and it was exciting. My dad was a farmer, so he understood that resurrection thing too. So to use the things that are available to us in our homes and in our gardens and our yards, to just go out and spend some time and thank God for new life.
And I think more than ever before, Chris, we have to be a people of joy and of positivity.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be our biggest challenge living in this world right now. There's a lot of gloom and doom. But if we truly are resurrected people, then we have to act and feel and participate in that.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And Kevin, so often the good thing about Easter that I always liked is it wasn't a gathering of a lot of people into the home. It mostly was your nuclear family. You know, what you were there. You didn't travel. Although over the years we made a trip up every once in a while to see Julie's mom and dad, but that became a celebration at our house of the four of us. We have two boys, and so it was more focused on just us there at the house, and we understood that you could celebrate again. You know, whatever we talk about giving up for Lent, we get to get that back out on that Easter day, and it's quite often pointed out, hey, you can do this again. And so like, I'm going to have a cup of coffee that morning. I'm going to sleep with my pillow that night. It's going to be awesome.
So as we really look, we've made a lot of sacrifices that we've talked about this Lent that maybe we didn't anticipate making, some social distancing, some things like that. So I think it's really important that you talk about celebrating with just our nuclear family, because right now we're not supposed to be traveling places to see people.
Right.
We're not even supposed to be going to see grandma and grandpa because we want to protect everybody, right?
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit, your boys are both out of the house now. How do you and Julie celebrate just the two of you for Easter?
Well, besides sleep in.
Besides sleeping in and having coffee.
Well, we also understand what a celebration is, and we make it a special day by just being together and making sure that what we've taken out of our lives during Lent, we put back in on that Easter day. And so we make a point of a bigger meal that day, you know, and of course not to the point of gluttony, but close. Just wherever that point is, just real close. And spend the day reflecting on what Christ did for us, and that we know who wins this. And then we also really look forward to the whole week, because as a Catholic Church, Easter's too big for one day. And the world will tell you it's one day, but the church will tell you it's that whole week. They call it the octave of Easter. And every day at daily Mass, and I encourage you to go to daily Mass, not here at St. Pat's, but at your home, go to daily Mass and listen to those readings, because the first reading is going to be from the Acts of the Apostles. And as Kevin said, these readings come from people who were not even sure that there would be. They didn't know there was going to be an Easter or an Acts of the Apostles, but it tells stories about them. And the apostles will be walking down the road and seeing some folks over here that need healed, and they heal them. And that's got to be, they just got to look at each other and say, that's what Jesus was talking about. Do you remember the time he told us that? And I just think about those guys in the days before Jesus rose, how changed it must have been that very next day. And for them to walk down a road and heal people. Hey, this is what he said we'd be able to do. And we can do it now. And we need to look at that in our lives. That wasn't just given to the apostles. It's given to all of us. And all week long at each one of those readings, we need to reflect on that and then work on that in our own homes. Because all of those things need to take place in our homes. The celebrations, the healings, and believe me, by the time that happens, it's going to be a while since we got to get out and get about. So we'll need those things, but really reflect on those readings of the Acts of the Apostles, and then the gospel is always about Jesus coming out of the tomb. Just reminds you all 7 days of the week.
Powerful.
It's really an exciting time. It's an exciting time in our church. It's an exciting time in our families and in our lives. And it's a little different this year, but the main story is still about life coming again. It's still about the light and the living water and the healing and the beauty that comes with Jesus. So I encourage all of you to continue to celebrate with your families. Please text or call or email Kevin and I if you have any questions during this time. We also know that a lot of you haven't celebrated the Easter Vigil before, and there's a lot that goes on, so we're available all the time to answer any questions.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Awesome. So tune in tonight for Easter Vigil at 8 o'clock. It'll be live streamed on both YouTube and our Facebook page. There'll also be links on our website to find that live stream. Again, reach out to us if you have any questions, and Kevin and I will be back again next week to talk a little bit about continuing the momentum of Easter into the rest of our lives.
Yes.
Should we end with a prayer?
Please.
We should.
How about a glory be?
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Awesome. Father,
Father,
Son,
Son,
Holy
Holy
Spirit.
Spirit.
Amen.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Amen.
Enjoy your Easter. God bless.
Have a great day,
Hallelujah.
Easter.
Oh.